Hey, we're almost through. We're now on segment 6. And in this segment, we're going to cover 4 items: left rear hike in a stock car, right rear spring split, entry in the corner, and left front load transferred to the right rear. That's in segment 6. So let's get started.
Shane Wolf Jr. says, how much left rear hike would you recommend on a stock car from ride height for crumbly conditions and super dry slick?
Okay, so if I'm, how much chain drop on a stock car in different conditions, crumbly and slick? So I'm going to say 4 inches. Okay, here again, it's going to depend on where all this is measured at, and also if you can actually get 4 inches. If it would be nice, did he say IMCA?
He did not specify.
Okay, so if you're IMCA,
On a stock car.
yeah, if you're IMCA, you can't run a chain. If you're USRA, I feel like you can, but you might need to check the rules on that. If you can run a chain, get that thing on a chain and get the preload in that car, because that'll make that car really good. If you can't, then try to run the shock to into travel and put preload on it. If you're going to run the shock against into travel, you might want to bump out spacer in the shock, which most people don't do, but it probably needs to be done. If you don't understand that, let me know, and we'll get that taken care of. But if you do that car, I mean, I've got cars that we do preload on, and it's made them way better. And we're not on a chain like an IMCA car. We're not on a chain, and we're not always out against the end of the shock. If you can get hike without sacrificing your forward drive, you are going to sacrifice your forward drive. You just can't lose your forward drive. So kind of understand this: hike equals momentum, not drive. Okay, you got to understand that, and you got to accept that. So if you're going to go out there and put a lot of hike in a car, and then complain about the lack of drive, it's like, what's going to happen? It's just part of it. So you have to drive the car as a momentum car. Hike in a stock car, it's going to be a little different. If you looked at them IMCA cars, that's what they were doing. They were just lowering the front down, hiking up the rear, and they were getting turn out of the car because of the rake they were putting in. The thrust angle is so much greater with that hike than without it, and it drives nose the car in the ground. So it allows the car to turn, and you can start wedging the car up against itself, and it'll turn really well, and it'll go forward really well. So hike can be a good thing, but you kind of got to be in excess, to get it to be a good thing.
Derek Ross said, what would you consider too much rear spring split? Right rear stiffer than left rear, or vice versa?
In a normal car, we are right rear heavy. So like on a mod, B mod, we're 125 left rear, we're 225, 250 right rear.
I think he's a mod light.
I think he's a mod light.
Yeah.
On the mod light, I'm going to be right rear heavy. So our standard spring's running in there at 160, 180. Probably need to push 200. But the problem with the mod light, once you get into that 200 range, the amount of spring compression you have at ride height is becoming too small. So you can't get the right rear too stiff, because the right rear is just going to bounce around on top of the spring. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of times the car is not going to have any traction on the right rear because it's got no spring. That's why we kind of need to do the spring, the bump. The spring allows the car to have traction and compression. The bump keeps the car from bicycling in the ruts, So we're that bump load over there needs to come up really quick, and that's a little bit of the problem, because the bump doesn't get to load very quick, so we may have to play around with some urethane, not foam bumps, but like polyurethane. They're going to stop the travel probably too quickly. you know.
He said he can't do butt stops.
Well, we're just going to have to work on it a little bit. You know, a 7-inch spring. So let's say you have a 6-inch car. You know, it comes with 6-inch shocks. But we're on pinch clamps. Then let's go to a 7-inch shock left rear. Let's do a 180 spring. Right rear, not left rear. I said left rear. Let's go to a 7-inch right rear. Okay, if we're getting that excessive travel, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, let's move the pinch clamp up, let's move the spring up, and let's get in that 160, 180 range of spring, and you know, see if we can't. Because here again, we want load on the right rear tire. I don't care if it's a late model or mod light, stock car, B mod, A mod. We want to load the right rear, and we want to keep it loaded, and we want to do it early on entry and load it all the way through the corner. And by doing this, this will fix a vast amount of problems we have in these cars. But we're not doing that. I feel like the late model world's doing a pretty good job of it. And you know, like let's use Ricky Thornton as an example. Here's a guy that's doing extremely good, but he also is a guy that really understands that right rear. I mean, he come from a modified, he come from a slick track. He understands the importance. And I think sometimes, even though he's got really good equipment, I'm sure, so does a lot of the other people. You know, I'm a fan of a lot of them, and Ricky's outdoing them. And why? Why is that? Well, I think it has to do with that seat and what's sitting in it, sometimes more than what it has to do with the car. So here's a good example where you got a lot of good cars, and you got one guy that's really got really good timing. I mean, he's really good. You know, I mean, he's really good. So I don't know that answered the question. I kind of got off on that Ricky deal. And Ricky's been phenomenal, and there's a lot of guys that are phenomenal. Davenport's phenomenal. You know, B. Shep, them guys, they're all great drivers. But I think right now Ricky's timing's a little better, and all three of them guys display very good entry timing. You know, and you can't miss it. You can't miss it. If you miss it by 20 feet, you're screwed. You know, and in that world, you're screwed. You know, in a modified or a mod light, not so much because everybody else is doing it so wrong. So you take every good. Rodney Sanders has always been, in my opinion, one of the best modified entry guys there is. Okay, and you know, Tyler Davis is doing a great job, but I think, this is personal opinion, I think, you know, what Rodney does is a little different than what Tyler does. Okay, and Tyler's taking care of it on the backside of the corner. Okay, entry of the corner is 100% of what we do, and it's about 10% of what we care about. Okay, guys, we need to figure it out. And I'm going to be honest with you, our team deal, we try to work with drivers on this, but it's not something that most people, me and Yvette was talking about it earlier before we started. How do you help somebody without criticizing them? We have friends that are doing stuff that we want to give advice to, but it's criticism, and nobody accepts criticism. I don't. Ask my wife. I don't accept criticism well.
No.
And when I'm helping a customer, I tell guys this: there's nothing that I'm going to say on this video. Like I use Ricky as an example. Okay, and earlier I kind of flubbed it up a little bit with somebody else, but I'm never going to say anything to offend Ricky Thornton. What's the point? Why would I do that? Why would I tell you something to hurt your feelings? I have no interest in hurting anybody's feelings. But I want to be faster. I want to be better. I want to learn like you want to learn. You want to be faster. Okay, so if I'm helping you and I say something that pisses you off, well, get unpissed off because I'm trying to help. Not trying to hurt, trying to help. Which I have a tendency to kind of hurt people's feelings, so I apologize for that. But
Okay, Vic Parker asked, how do you get the left front tire to come off the ground to get more bite on an IMCA A mod?
okay, what was his name?
Vic Parker.
Vic. In our program, we're
Slick
not.
track, he says.
In our program, we're not trying to do that. Okay, and I'll explain the reason why. When that left front comes off and loads that right rear, there's a lot of movement there. Okay, and the movement, the excess of, when you're in excess of the movement, is the only time it works. And 9 times out of 10, it takes moisture to make it really work. The best car you can ever have will be that car right there, the one that overloads the right rear. It can probably be the best car you ever have. You can also spend a whole season chasing that feeling, or longer, and never get to it, okay? Because it requires the car to be doing what it's doing, the track to be doing what it's doing, the tires to be doing what they're doing. And when all three of them come together, we had a car at Super Nationals one year. You know, pulled the left front about that much, set her back down about the flag stand, and I mean, shoulda, coulda, woulda, won that deal, but you know, got taken out, got hit, spring fell out, finally pushed over and got into the tire, flattened tire. You know, it didn't fall out and hit the ground, it fell out and got stuck in the panhard bar. And somehow we ended up with a flat tire. But that weight transfer is telling you that you don't have enough right rear load. Okay, so you can get the right rear bound up, and you're kind of bending the car between, you know, the rear and the front, and it does feel super good. But in general, in a slick track, it doesn't traction up very well. Okay, so here's another example of that, you know, over excess. If you cam your car over on the left rear, I don't care how slick it is, that car is going to go forward like a rocket. Okay, and if you can make it through a heat race without blowing the tire out, pretty much you're going to win it, because there's not going to be a car on the planet that'll go forward better than a car cammed over on the left rear. It's just that they normally break stuff and flatten tires. You know, they don't make it 2 laps before they destroy stuff. Okay, principle's the same. We want to load that tire with steer in the car, have the car turned into the corner, the rear stepped out, throttled up, and be putting lateral load on that tire to keep it loaded through the corner. And we should be able to accelerate the whole way through the corner. And it feels like you're tethered to the infield. Your car will go faster when you give it gas. So I was always taught, you know, when your car gets loose, throttle up. And in this process, you know, you're roll steer free. You're not loose. There's a huge difference. We need to learn that. So if you want the car to hike the left front, just put the right rear spring in a position that's not going to be able to hold the car up. Move it in a little, put a little rear steer in it, whatever you got to do. An IMCA car, a coilover car will probably be harder to do it on, but I've seen cars towed to left front on caution lap. Okay, that doesn't equal tremendous amounts of load to the right rear tire. So I'm not a fan of that. That's not what we're trying to do. You know, generally, if we can run a chain on the left front, and that really makes the car good, then that tells you you need to be working on your right rear load. I'm not opposed to a chain on the left front, but I am opposed to, you know, trying to transfer a bunch of weight. You know, we need 2 inches of travel on that right rear. We need to hit a 2-inch down number on that right rear. And in the springs that we sell that do that, there's a dyno sheet right in the box, and you see right where it's generally marked where it's at. You know, that 850-pound load number is right in there at 2 inches of travel beyond ride height. So if your ride height's right and your preload's right, your down number's right, and it's all built into that right rear spring we sell.